clothes. Got a question in a black.
It's a beautiful day on the South Strand. Welcome to Conversations with the Hoff. I'm Steve Hoffman, your host, and with me in the studio today are my two Liberty Crack Media regulars, Randy Oporowski and Trip Detmering. And Mike is also here. Today we're going to have a conversation with Arthur Hampton. He's the regional director of the John Birch Society. Arthur Hampton is a native of Blacksburg, South Carolina, and he holds a degree from Fruitland Bible Baptist College and North Greenville University, where he majored in Christian studies and philosophy. The son of a family that fled communist China for Taiwan, Arthur now serves as Southeastern Executive Director of the John Birch Society, leading efforts across 7 states to defend freedom and oppose socialism, communism, and government overreach. The John Birch Society is to advance less government and, God willing, a better world through education, leadership, and grassroots action grounded in moral and constitutional principles. So welcome to the show, Arthur.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
To begin with, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your role is in the John Birch Society and maybe a little history of the John Birch Society?
Well, my role as a regional director or a coordinator is to start chapters of the John Birch Society on the grassroots level, to work together to fight against tyranny and communism, a totalitarian state. It starts at the grassroots level, and then once you're effective on the grassroots level, county level, then you can be effective on the state level, and then once we're effective on the state level, only then can we be effective on the federal level. So we're just putting groups of people together, patriots that like the Constitution, that want to do something about what's going on, and putting them together, talking about the problems, and then saying, let's do something about the problem instead of just sitting around complaining, and just making a difference on the state level and then on the federal level. Basically what I do is I give people the tools, equip people with the information that they need so they can be effective where they are. No matter what they're doing, if you're misinformed or you've been succumbed to propaganda, you really can't do much if you don't know what's going on. So giving them the real news through our magazine, through the Insider Report, and then giving them the strategy that we have to fight back against tyranny and communism, to decrease the size of government. I mean, if we limited the federal government just to the 18 enumerated powers given to Congress that has the power of the purse, I mean, we would have successfully reduced the size of government by what, 85 to 87%?
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. You mentioned about the tools that you provide to people. As you well know, I have experience with the John Birch Society. For many years, I taught your course, The Constitution is the Solution. And that, to me, you talked about getting people aware of what's going on, and if we only went by the Constitution, we could definitely downsize the federal government, which is part of your mission statement also. So what are you doing to actually get people more educated about the Constitution?
Well, there's several different ways that we educate. One is that course there, The Constitution is the Solution. We have a new one out called The Blueprint for Liberty. And it's a little bit more updated and segmented out a little bit. The old one was 6 one-hour blocks of information. And this one here, we broke it up into 30-minute segments.
Yeah, it used to be a little difficult to get people to attend those 6 consecutive, 1-hour sessions. Actually, they're like an hour and a half sessions because they had to have room for question and answer, stuff like that. So now they're just 30-minute segments.
Yes, 30-minute segments. And so I would suggest, doing 2 or 3 at one time, 4 if you're able to absorb that much, and just getting it done quicker. But that's one of the many ways to do that, because if you don't know, there's a lot of people that's just really gung-ho about doing something, but they don't know what their rights are. They don't know the Constitution. And if you don't know how to use your weapons and you go into battle, you're going to get killed. And so what we want to do is equip people with the right mindset, with the right tools of how our government needs to function. I'll give you a quick illustration. When you're trying to put together a puzzle that is our civil government, you look at the box top of what it should look like. And if you don't have the box top, you're hard pressed to put it back correctly. Now, not only that, but on the other side of the table, you have people trying to put the puzzle back together, only they aren't looking at the box top that is the Constitution on how to put the civil government together. What they're doing is they're looking at a box top that has a hammer and a sickle on it in a totalitarian government, and they're trying to put it together as well. So we really need to understand what the Constitution is and what our rights are as citizens before we can proceed to fight the battle and put the puzzle back together. And so that's one of the many things that we do to do that. The other thing that we produce is the scorecards that rates legislators. Now,
right, is that called the Liberty Index or the Freedom Index?
The Freedom Index,
okay.
And also we have the scorecard that goes along with that. What happens is we take 6 important votes every legislative session, and that pertains to the Constitution, and we show how certain legislators vote. And so in the South here, where you have a Republican supermajority, and keep in mind the John Birch Society is nonpartisan. We are apolitical. We're just an educational organization. So there's less bias when it comes to political parties. And so when we rate someone, it's based off of those 6 votes, and we show what part of the Constitution that it pertains to and whether that's been violated or not. You don't have to say anything good or bad about a legislator. All you got to do is show the electorate how they vote, because most people don't even know that. And then they go, oh, well, do you like the guy or do you not like the guy?
We definitely need that in South Carolina. I ran a list of South Carolina legislators who scored above 50 on your Freedom Index. And out of the hundreds of legislatures in the House of Representatives in South Carolina, only 20 scored above 50. Now, to me, that's pathetic. And these are Republicans. So what's happened to the Republican Party these days?
Well, you have 2 sides of the Republican Party. You have the Rhino Republicans, and then you have the actual conservative Republicans. And it seems like it's tearing itself apart. And in South Carolina, there is no Democratic presence unless you live in like Charleston or I think, a little bit of Myrtle Beach and Columbia, of course. But everywhere else, there's a Republican supermajority. So deciding whether or not they're a Rhino or a Republican or a conservative is a telltale sign. And showing them, and I don't care how conservative you talk, I don't care how liberal you talk, how you vote is where the rubber meets the road. And when people see, their electorate sees how they vote, you can decide for yourself whether you like the guy or not. Is my representative going to Columbia and representing me, or are they not? And if they're not, then you need to have a conversation with them to see if they can correct themselves, or you need to find somebody else to represent you because they're going in your place to Columbia or to D.C. and representing you.
As a resident,
name, representative.
Yeah, I don't know. As a resident of South Carolina for over 20 years, I can tell you that it is highly questionable that the people that we elect and send off to Columbia are representing the citizens. They're representing special interest groups.
Yep.
That's what I believe. They don't represent me, because if they were representing the citizens, most Americans believe in the minimum interference in their lives. But yet, over the past years, the size and scope of the South Carolina government has grown exponentially. And this is being accomplished by Republicans. So they don't believe in limited government, and they're not really representing me as an individual. What do you think about that?
I agree with that 100%. They're not. Most of them are not representing you, the citizen. Most of them are just out for themselves or out to get reelected. And South Carolina, the overall state scorecard is 37.7. Okay.
How does that compare with Texas or Florida or Tennessee?
It's much worse. We have the worst Republicans overall of any state in the union. Our Republicans specifically vote worse than any other Republican in any other state, any other Republicans in the state. I mean, the Republicans in South Carolina vote 43% of the time with the Constitution. The Democrats vote 24%. Now, I will say this. We do have 3 individuals this last session that scored 100. But everybody else, it drops really quickly after that.
Did they happen to be members of the South Carolina Legislative Freedom Caucus?
Episode 1 of Microphone Monkeys drops this Thursday, January 15th. If you are into sadism, or just pain in general, tune in on your favourite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcast and more.
Most of them, yes, and some of them are, or most of them are members of the society. I'm not going to disclose membership.
Yeah. Of the top 20 that I was talking about half of those were members of the Legislative Freedom Caucus. Now, there may be other members that are members of the John Birch Society also. Indeed.
But that just shows when you get good information, you can use it for good. But when you go down there, the manipulation tactics that they use, it's not just one way. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways they use to manipulate the legislators and persuade them to do things that are really contrary to the interest of the people. And that's who they're supposed to represent, is the people, the very people that they go down there to represent. I mean, and so that's some of the different ways and tools that we have to use to educate people, and get people on the right track is through education. I mean, people say, well, if we can just get this legislator out, things will be better. If we can get that legislator out, things will be better. Let's say Biden. I'll give you an example. So the people of Delaware has elected Biden for how many years as the senator? 40 years, something like that? It's been a long time. And so when he got to be vice president, the people of Delaware couldn't elect Biden anymore. So what they did was they elected Ted Kaufman. Well, Biden had a 17, Ted Kaufman had a 7, and he ran for 3 terms, and the guy they elected after Ted Kaufman, he had a 17 as well. So the problem is not legislators per se. That's a symptom of the problem. It's the people that are electing these people that are the issue. And Sir William Blackstone said the law is the moral sediment is the embodiment of the moral sediment of the people. And so the moral sediment of the people in Delaware is a Biden or a Ted Kaufman or that other guy they elected after Ted Kaufman. And so that's what the people of Delaware want. That's why they keep electing Biden. That's why, or a Biden, or these people. So term limits is out, because if you limit the term of the legislator, they just elect somebody else just like him. I think a Nancy Pelosi is a good representative for the people that elect her. That's the values that they want, is a Nancy Pelosi, and she goes and she does what those people want. So if you eliminate or term limit out a Nancy Pelosi, the people that elected a Nancy Pelosi will let somebody else just like her. Term limits are a false solution.
But we have a lot of senators and a lot of congressmen up there that have been in Congress in their jobs for 30 plus years. I mean, when they get to Mordor on the Potomac, they're going to change. They're not going to be the same people that were there initially when they first ran. They're going to get corrupted by the system. So wouldn't term limits really help to weed out the corruption and get people in there that actually represent you and I, that have actual constitutional principles and haven't been destroyed by the Mordor on the Potomac syndrome?
Well, when you send people up there or over there, you need to send somebody with character, like a Ron Paul. He went up there and he didn't get persuaded with all the little tactics they use. Why? Because he had character. If you send somebody up there that doesn't have a strong will and character, that's what happens. And so if they get turned, you just vote them out. Vote for somebody else. Because lobbyists, when they see a freshman legislator, they see fresh meat because they don't know all the little tactics and little games that lobbyists use to manipulate them to do what they want to do. And that's why the deep state and lobbyists love freshmen. So by the time you get enough, knowledge of the position after being there for a few years, you're term limited out. But I'll give you another example. Look at every single president in the last 50 years that has had a second term. The second term was much worse than the first. Just look at Donald Trump. His first term was better than I expected. I mean, really. But his second term, it's like, what in the world? You got him in 2016 saying Lindsey Graham is terrible and the worst person in the world. And then 10 years later, second term, Lindsey Graham's so great. Well, what happened? Yeah. He was in his last term. He has no accountability. The people, you've removed all accountability that he has, and so he does whatever he wants to do. Obama's second term was much worse than his first. Clinton's was much worse. Even Ronald Reagan, his second term was much worse than his first. And so when you remove the accountability like that, because the only accountability that the people have over the elected official is the decision of whether or not to vote for him again. And if you remove that accountability, then they do whatever they want to do. Their final term is basically dumpster fire garbage. And so they do whatever. It's kind of like putting in your 2 weeks notice at your job. Well, what are they going to do? Fire me? I mean, you're already on your way out. They do what you do whatever you want to do at the job.
Okay. So what's your position?
That's how it works here.
What's the JBS current position on term limits?
Oh, we oppose them because it's not freedom.
So wouldn't it be nice if we've got some problems with our current Constitution? Obvious. As a matter of fact, Patrick Henry, when it came to be ratified in Virginia, he actually talked about against ratifying the Constitution because he saw it as a vehicle that would eventually expand the size and scope of the federal government. So I hear there's a lot of talk these days about constitutional convention. What does the JBS say about constitutional convention?
Well, if we had a constitutional convention, the question is our legislators today more American, more patriotic than the founding fathers of America, or more communistic and totalitarian in their approach to government? That's the question. And I think I pretty much everybody, 99% of the time, would say that the founding fathers of America were more freedom-minded than the legislators that we have today. And so to hold a constitutional convention and open the whole Constitution up to be changed, I don't think is the solution, because you're going to come up with a Constitution that is so far different and more totalitarian
Right.
And what we have now.
Yeah, the con is supposed to be limited. Matter of fact, it's only supposed to be limited to like 3 particular issues or whatever. And that's a lie, because if you look at the first Constitutional Convention, we had the Confederation of States, the Articles of Confederation. Okay, we're just going to have a Constitutional Convention and it's just minor changes. BS. It was a total rewrite of the Constitution. It was a runaway convention with a new Constitution for the United States. So I don't believe any of these con people that come up to me and say, oh, no, it's not going to be runaway. We're only going to focus on 3 different issues.
Well, look at not only look at the precedent set by that. You know, they were supposed to amend the Articles of Confederation, but look at Venezuela. Okay, Chavez, he had a problem with the Constitution because he wanted more power, and he said, well, let's hold a constitutional convention, because their Constitution was modeled very much like America's. So they held a constitutional convention, I think it was 98, and said, oh, we're just going to change a couple little things and not mess with the whole thing. Well, what they did was, just like they did in Philadelphia, they threw the whole thing out, come up with a new totalitarian communistic constitution, and they went from the richest country in South America to starving in what, 5 years?
A little bit longer than that, but it was not a pretty sight, that's for sure.
I mean, it was very drastic. And so the same thing I think will happen here with the precedent set. And the other thing is, we're thinking about it wrong. The Constitution is not the problem. The Constitution, getting back to the Constitution, is the solution, because in D.C., they're blatantly not following the Constitution.
Right. They don't follow it at all.
What's changing it going to do? I mean, that reminds me of the gun control laws. You have a gunman that acquires a gun illegally, goes on the school property illegally, and shoots people illegally. Believe it or not, it's illegal to shoot people. And then you have crazy people. We need more gun legislation laws. I mean, you're going to add another law for him to ignore?
Yeah.
If they're ignoring the Constitution now, they'll continue to ignore it if you change it.
There's a libertarian comedian out there who, during his show, he talks about our elected representatives put their hand on the Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution. And then the very next thing, they turn around right in front of us and wipe their rear ends with it. That's our current elected officials. They could care less about the Constitution. So we have an existential threat that's going to destroy our representative republic. And that's, I addressed it in one of my first shows. It's the road to collectivism, the road to serfdom, the road to socialism. Now, that's one of your big themes. Tell us a little bit about how you go about warning the people of the dangers of socialism.
Well, we have coordinators that go around and give speeches on the topics in various places, different patriot groups, different clubs, and educating people on this. And there's a couple of reasons why, and one of the reasons why the legislators are able to swear an oath to the Constitution and turn around and wipe their butt with it is because the legislators don't know the electorate does not know the Constitution themselves. That's why they're able to get away with it.
Right.
And secondly,
the low IQ voters are a big problem.
Yes, they don't know it themselves, and secondly, they don't know. First of all, most people don't even know who their legislators are, much less how they vote. And so, I think there was an attempt to hide voting records about a year or two ago. What was it, loyalty oath that they tried to do to stop people from posting the votes on Facebook, because the electorate was getting upset because of the way their officials were voting. And they tried to hide it. So it's a basic Christian principle. You know, the darkness loves shadows. They love to stay hidden. But when the light reveals the darkness, that's when the darkness tries to run away and do things to stay in the dark. And that's a classic move there, to not fix yourself.
We have a classic example of that right now in the South Carolina legislature. Randy, are you aware of the gag bill? The gag legislation, or our elected representatives want to control the populace, the regular people who elect them. the same way that they control lobbyists, where they have to be registered or something like that, and it's, what it does is it shuts down criticism of the stuff that the legislators are doing. It's called the gag bill. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just another way to try to hide themselves and not correct themselves, but to hide what they're doing. I mean, I was handing out, about a year ago, I was handing out the scorecard at a local GOP where the legislator of that local GOP, he came to it, to try to shake hands with people and whatnot. But what he didn't know is I'd already handed out his voting record, which was pretty bad. I think it was like a 33 or 37. And I'd handed everything out, and I didn't know who I was handing. I was just indiscriminately handing things out. I handed one to him, and he got upset with me. And I thought to myself, why is he getting mad and berating me, basically just cursing me out? I said, Mr. Legislator, I didn't vote this way. Why are you mad at me? You're the one that voted this way. If you're going to be mad at anybody, you need to be mad at yourself for voting this badly.
Okay, so you go to these meetings. How do you prove to the people at these meetings that socialism is an existential threat to our republic? What do you have? What kind of data and information do you have to convince them that it is a real threat and not just some conspiracy theory?
Well, it's not a theory if you can prove it. And if you can track the movements of what they've done throughout, Europe, throughout America, and just show the connection between the two, I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on. And the John Birch Society, we carry the Communist Manifesto because people, they're communist and they don't know they're communist, really. And I say, well, this legislation, that's communism. And they go, no, it's not. And then I show them in the Communist Manifesto, oh, this is redistribution of wealth. Read chapter 1 of the Communist Manifesto. You take from the bourgeoisie and you give it to the proletariat. That's redistribution of wealth. And they don't believe me until I show them. And then they start backtracking. Well, it's not redistribution of wealth. It's crony capitalism. Well, I don't care what you call it. It is what it is. It's taking money from one person and giving it to someone else or some other organization. I mean, one of the biggest things of redistribution of wealth we had in the history of South Carolina was the Scout Motors Act, where we give, I think, $1.29 billion
right,
to Volkswagen.
And they were supposed to build a plant. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, they even moved their headquarters to North Carolina. They didn't even keep it in South Carolina. And what did they do in this session?
And then South Carolina stuck with the check. I mean, you spend everybody else's money and then nothing happens and then we're stuck with the bill.
Not only that, but during this particular session, they're going to give them another $500 million to Scout Motors. So it's fleecing the taxpayers. They don't even hide it anymore. Some kind of special interest is saying, push Scout Motors. We need EVs. We need batteries for EVs. Fleece the taxpayer. We're only here to represent the special interests.
It's basically it's a big money laundering game, is what it is. Look at Nikki Haley. She had a big hand in getting Bowen here to South Carolina and give them, I don't even know, I can't even track how much money they give them. And guess what? Nikki Haley's on the board of Bowen now.
There you go.
And we paid for it.
Right. But there are other elements of socialism that people don't realize. And that's like the public education system. That's a socialist entity right there. Is you got to have government schools. Why would you have to have government schools?
Well, that's the 10th pillar of the Communist Manifesto. If you look at the 10 pillars of communism, that's the 10th one. Free public education for all, so they can train up good little communists that need the government for everything. And that's the other thing. Where in the Constitution does it give them the power to establish a school or a Department of Education? It's not in the 18 enumerated powers. And so but they're doing it, and so they're outside of the scope. They're outside of their jurisdiction, if you will, in doing those certain things, and then we're paying for it.
Can you quickly comment on the other pillars? Do you have that in front of you? Are you prepared for that? I know you have to denigrate any kind of religion, public schools, religion, healthcare. You have to push for the government providing healthcare, which, by the way, is not in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution either.
Absolutely. So the 10 pillars, the first one is abolition of property and land and application of all rents of land in public places. So basically, you can't own any land. I think Klaus Schwab said it best: you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, kind of deal. Number 2, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. I mean, we definitely have that now.
Hello, 1913, Woodrow Wilson.
Yep. The abolition of all right of inheritance. So we can't give what we earn to our children. The government gets it.
You can, but it will get taxed by 50%.
Yes. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. Here's a good one. The centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Don't we
Federal
have the
Reserve
Federal
Act of
Reserve?
1913.
Yep. The centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. I think every communist dictator of the 20th century took over communication for propaganda and transportation, so you couldn't, I think, what was it, Hitler took over Volkswagen, so they controlled who went where and what was said.
Amtrak, I guess, would be an example. Amtrak.
Yep. Number 7, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, bringing into cultivation of wasteland and improvement of soil, generally in accordance with the common plan. So take over industry and let's see here. Equitable liability of all labor, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. So the question is, who owns the most agricultural farmland in America?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. That is correct. And here's the other thing. You do what I tell you to do or you don't eat. That's a pretty basic control factor. I mean, it's all about totalitarian control. I mean, and there's nothing in here about throwing a Molotov cocktail or a bomb or anything like that. And that's what people think the Communist Manifesto is about.
Yeah, it's all about big government control of your life. Rather than decreasing the size and scope of government, on the road to socialism, you increase the size and scope of government. And that's exactly what's happening in our state. The size and scope of our government is being increased every session. More and more certifications required, more and more regulations, more and more taxes, spending more and more money on supposed government private property projects. It's going on right here in this state. And that's what we need the John Birch Society to get out there and tell the people exactly what's happening so we can put a stop to it. So thank you, Arthur, for being a guest on our show today. It's been a very interesting conversation. And much of what we've been talking about, I've covered in some of the previous episodes of Conversations with the Hoff, where I focus primarily on the road to socialism. Most of our listeners of this show also realize that this is a libertarian-oriented program, and we believe in limited government, individual and economic freedom. They're pretty much similar to the JBS mission. My greatest fear is that neither the two dominant political parties today actually understand the socialist threat to our society, nor do they actively or openly support the principles outlined in the Constitution. For our country to survive as a constitutional republic, the citizens are going to have to do a better job of vetting candidates, which you've been talking about. The JBS can support that effort by vetting candidates through your Freedom Index, through your outreach programs, by letting the people know exactly what their candidates are doing in the State House. So thanks again, Arthur. It was a great conversation. This episode has been brought to you by Liberty Crack Media. To learn more about the many other podcasts brought to you by this network, go to libertycrackmedia.com. And while you're there, click on that donate box button to help us deliver our message to an even greater audience. And now a word from our glorious leader, the executive producer of Liberty Crack Media, Trip Detmering.
Yes, and thank you, Arthur. And if you want to learn more about the John Birch Society, go to jbs.org. You'll see that in the show notes. And hopefully we'll have Arthur on for another episode sometime in the future. And again, I want to thank everybody for listening to Conversations with the Hoff.
Pull up a chair, leaning close. Got a question in a black coffee glow. From campus quads to the Capitol steps, we're talking who we are, what come next. Conversations with a Hoff, where the big ideas kick the shoes off. Liberty, tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, then let it ride. Conversations with a Hoff, turn it up and turn it over in your mind. Tax to the hill or left alone. How much power do we loan? Rights on paper, rights in hand. Where do we draw that line in the sand? Conversations with a Hoff, where the big ideas kick their shoes off. Liberty, tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, and let it ride. Conversations with the Hoff, turn it up and turn it over in your mind. Is it either or in between? Old school roots and a freedom dream. Pull that thread, see what you find. One more question, we're out of time. Conversations with the Hoff, where the big ideas kick the shoes off. Liberty, tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, then let it ride. Conversations with the Hoff, hit subscribe and take a little time to think it through.